Awesome, awesome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to episode 1 of Crack Code Interview Problems in Python. Now, we want this to be a very interactive stream. We want you to join in the chat. We want you to ask your questions of us. We want to ask you questions. We want to engage with everyone who's out there. But we must ask that you follow our code of conduct. We've dropped our code of conduct in the chat. Basically, don't be a jerk or we kick you off and we ban you from Microsoft events. So with that, welcome to Crack Code Interview Problems in Python. And I'm super excited to be joined today by Jay Miller. Jay, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Jay. I'm a senior cloud advocate along with you, Jim, over at Microsoft. I am specifically on the Python team. I will say my pronouns are they, them, but I don't get upset if you mess those up. And yeah, I've been programming in Python as a hobbyist for like 8 years, and I am traditionally terrible at coding interviews. So anxiety exists, and I am very familiar with it. So we'll see what happens here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jay. Thanks. So I'm Jim Bennett. For those who haven't met me before, I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. My job is to do stuff like this. So I get paid to hang out with cool people like Jay, hack on things and code on things. So Jay, you say you don't come from a traditional computer science background. What is your background?
So I went through the military route. I served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 5 years as a data network specialist. Got out of the military, went into the private sector, and worked as a help desk technician and SharePoint specialist. And funny how that worked out. Then I realized that I was enjoying automating my job so that I didn't have to do work, and went over to marketing with the promise that I could also automate that job and not do work. And I think once I got done automating things, I was like, oh, I really like giving talks and presenting, and I do some podcasts and I make YouTube videos for fun. And I was like, it'd be fun if I could get paid to do all that stuff, but also have health insurance. So I started working as a developer advocate in 2020. Some other things happened in 2020, and that was really interesting. I got to have a lot of fun and cut my teeth while everybody was working from home. Travel budgets be warned. And now I'm here doing that and having fun like you, making videos and creating content.
Awesome. Cool. So I guess a question for our audience out there. Any of you had similar stories? Any of you got interesting routes into tech? I know, a lot of us do end up coming through the computer science route, though my degree is in chemistry, but I've been coding for 25 years. But yeah, if anyone else has got interesting stories about how they got into tech, please drop it in the chat. And Keshav Pandey says, hello team from, my
India?
flags are
Like Pakistan?
terrible.
I am terrible at flags as well. They're so tiny, and also geography.
Keshav, what flag is that? I want to say India.
I was pretty sure it was India, but I could be
leaning
wrong.
very close to try and see. Yeah, I'm old. My eyes.
This is where we need, like, I think every advocate needs like an emoji chat. Like right here. It's just like, that's what that is.
This emoji. Well, on stream one day, we should actually build like an emoji to country identifier that does it automatically.
There we go. Oh, hey, shout out from Atlanta. I'm originally from Tennessee, but I used to live in Macon. I went to high school in Macon. So yeah, I'm in California now. I'm in San Diego, but hopefully we'll be heading back in the near future to Atlanta. So love to see that. Colombia, never been to Colombia, would love to go to Colombia. I love Colombian coffee. Also, this is brought to you by coffee.
As always. Awesome. Hi, Cardrum. Trying to break into industry, but I'm an industrial engineer. Nice. Okay. So again, that's slightly alternative route.
More qualified than I am. I like it.
Cool. Okay. So Jabba says hello. All hey.
Artisan baker. That's awesome. An artisan baker. I want to break into the artisan baking industry. That sounds amazing.
Nice. I think next one. I'm guessing. Is that Cambridge, UK? Based off the time of day, I'm guessing maybe Cambridge, UK. So next time I'm in the UK, Matthew, I might have to try and find your bakery, because who doesn't like artisan baked goods? Awesome. Yeah, a lot of folks confirming that flag was India. So
Yeah.
Ashraf and Centric Supervisor confirming that's from India. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hi, Pramath. It's an
Toronto,
Indian from Manchester.
Berlin. Love Berlin. Been to Berlin before. That was really fun. I went to Berlin as a teenager. That was like the wild, like, wait a minute, I can drink here responsibly, of course, but like this is wow, this is like Americans immediately. They're just like, oh wow, let's devolve into drinking, I guess.
I'm over the age of 18 but under 21 and I can have alcohol. What is this weirdness?
When I was stationed,
normal.
Being stationed in Japan, where the drinking age was 20, was really interesting as well. Just because I think, one, high stress, not a lot of people prepared for that. And I think I came back to the US maybe with a little bit more responsibility because of that situation than, some of the people who had been, enlisted, been overseas, fought in battles, and then, come back. And now they're just being given this other responsibility. So yeah, I'm glad we have a nice international audience for this. I see some Python love from the UK. Automating the work that lawyers do. Yes, this is awesome. Nice. This is the type of stuff that got me into my job. I was automating the work that marketers do. So that is awesome. EMS, nice.
Oh, nice. This is Samantha from near New York City. Yeah, EMS. COVID made me realize just how toxic the industry was. So one software engineering boot camp later, here I am. Oh, nice. Congratulations. It's always awesome when we see folks actually deciding to do this kind of career change and they pivot, they work through something like a boot camp, which is such a massive amount of effort, especially if you're trying to juggle that with like a full-time job, because some people just cannot afford to give up work and then just come out the other side and actually get where they want to be. It's always incredible to see that. So Samantha, that is awesome. Really pleased, you're really excited for you. And yeah, as Code with Path says, automation their job, that is something a lot of folks do. I mean, the whole rise of the low code, no code movement is, how do you take people who are building up tech skills, whether they're just coding or whether they're just knowing how to use email and Excel, and then applying that to automating their job through lowering that barrier to entry to constructing applications, constructing kind of data flows. So
the thing I like about Python is, sorry, we were talking about PyCon earlier. Go to PyCon. The thing I like about Python is it tends to be like the vehicle that everyone can use. I've talked to people and there was this conversation about performance, and at this point now, I don't even think the performance conversation is one of those things that is even worth having anymore. But I tell people, like, sure, I can drive a Ferrari. However, then I got to get special gas for it. Then I run the risk of getting a speeding ticket. There's a lot of things. Then I got to worry about people stealing my Ferrari. Or I can drive a Honda Civic. And a Honda Civic is great because a Honda Civic can drive everywhere. It goes plenty fast enough. It takes any kind of gas, and it's really easy to swap out parts. And this is where, like, to me, Python really excels, is that it's a Honda Civic. Like, it can literally be used in so many different scenarios, so many different facets of the industry. And if something in itself just isn't working, or you need something else, you can just swap it out with something else and it's fine. And I feel like that's one of the things that has really benefited Python in its growth as a programming language.
Yeah, I mean, I guess think of like a more UK based analogy. There's the Ford Transit van. So like a big van, you can kind of do anything with it. But when you order the transit van, you can kind of get it in any shape combination, whether you want to put glass on the side or whether you want a pickup truck or you want it big, small, refrigerated. It's so flexible. It kind of does everything. But it won't, it won't win a Formula One race. But 99% of the time, you just want that, as you say, that Honda Civic, that transit van, the thing that can do everything. There is a small range of things where you want the speed. If you're building an operating system, you probably wouldn't write that in Python. But that is very much like the 1%, isn't it? The Python solves the 99% of problems.
Absolutely.
So, Erica here saying working for radio nonprofit.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Joe is here from Massachusetts. Jawad says, do you guys have any experience in setting up data pipelines?
No.
Wasn't this exactly one thing you said to me? I have no experience in data pipelines when we were setting this up.
I did say that, didn't I? I did make, this isn't a data pipeline. This is a storage queue pipeline. I added I created this thing that uses like Azure storage queues. And I came from, before Microsoft, I worked at Elastic, the creators of Elasticsearch. And they actually have they're kind of more in that space, but they have this tool called Logstash, which is like, you have an input, you store it somewhere, you can mutate it, and then you send it somewhere else. And I basically recreated the worst version of that using nothing but Azure storage queues, to where you just have raw text in JSON format. You store it in a storage queue, you take it out, you manipulate it how you want, and then you send it somewhere else. And for a while, up until Twitter got kind of weird, I was using it to automate tweets. And I did a campaign in October for ADHD Awareness Month. For those that don't know, I have ADHD. Hi. And I use that as a way to take like messages of encouragement, put them all in Azure storage queues, and then send them out with a graphic once a day. So you had this encouraging message that was just like, oh yeah, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this, and then like basically just let it run on its own. Which is the best type of running, is when it runs on its own.
Going back to the automation thing, you want to just automate it, just does its thing, yeah.
And there's a comment here that says, in interviews, what will be the problems for coding or questions companies could ask? That's a good question. And the answer is it depends on the company. Mm-hmm. Some companies will have a challenge like what we're going to probably be working on in a few minutes. Others will just want to know if you can write code. I will say my advocacy interview on the Python team was very much like that. It was more, hey, we need you to be able to build something quickly and explain what you're doing well. So it didn't necessarily matter that you knew the correct algorithms or even the names of them. What really mattered was, can you do the assignment? Which in that case, the assignment was, let's put together a fast API application in like 30 minutes. Doesn't have to look pretty, just has to be functional. And that's what we did. And yeah, we're gonna be tackling a problem. I don't know what the problem is or how it relates with that, but we'll be trying to accomplish something.
Yeah, I will go shout out to John Liu, makes a comment actually replying to Athena, saying, take a look at the gold standard of the book, Cracking the Code Interview. If you can get your hands on it, then look at LeetCode, HackerRank, and sites like that. Yeah, I mean, these are all great places to practice these kind of coding problems. LeetCode, you can go on there, choose your programming language, choose the level that you feel you're at, and then you just practice these problems. And then some companies sometimes may actually direct you to LeetCode or HackerRank to actually do the coding interviews. But one thing we definitely want to illustrate when we go through the problem in a second is if you're ever doing these kind of things in person. So if you're ever actually being interviewed, you're given a coding problem and the interview team are there with you, the most important thing you can do is talk constantly. Talk out loud, explain your thinking, because chances are they don't care whether you can solve the problem or not. Yeah. They care about how you approach the problem. And the only way they can learn how you approach the problem is if you tell them. So it's all about talking about it out loud. And that's kind of part of why I put this series together, invited Jay to come along, is so that you can see us trying to approach these, see how we do it. I've been running some similar thing in Rust, and if you were on my stream a couple of days ago, we didn't even get close to even starting to solve the problem.
No code was written.
There's a little bit of code, because it's all about discussing the problem and discussing the tools, techniques, and the language setup. So, that ability to talk out loud is one of the most important skills you can build. So, when you're practicing LeetCode, a good way to do it is to get a friend to come and sit with you. If you don't have a friend to hand, get a rubber duck, a cuddly toy, whatever. Go on a live stream. Just start a Twitch stream and just get into the habit of talking out loud as you do things. Doesn't matter if no one's watching your Twitch stream. It's just that ability to talk out loud is so important.
Jawad asked a question about exam certifications. I would say we're both Microsoft employees. We often get paid to talk about Azure, so can't answer that without some bias being there either way. But what I will say is, if you have any certification with any cloud platform, that usually tells people that you're capable of getting a certification. And also, I like how Gillian said it does depend on what company you're applying to. Each company will use a different tech stack. Again, I don't sweat that too much. I've used all of the major cloud platforms except for some of the ones in China. But what I've learned is most of them have a variation of another tool, and you can usually learn it relatively quickly. Some will have quirks that you appreciate, and some will have ones that you don't appreciate as much. So ultimately, you want to, I say, learn whatever's going to help you get certified the fastest, and then figure out how they do differ between the two. Because I think just having a certification in some cases is going to be maybe better than not. But I will also say I don't have any certifications. So there's that.
Yeah, because all the clouds, fundamentally, they basically offer the same features, just different ways, different abilities. Some are better than others. So just being able to navigate a cloud helps you if you move to a different cloud. Obviously, Azure is the best one. And as a Microsoft employee, if you are certified in one, you understand the principles, you understand how cloud applications are built, and so it can apply to others. I'm just going to zip back in the chat a little bit. I have to say good morning to Luce Carter, or good evening, I guess. Welcome, Luce. Luce is a friend from the UK, works for MongoDB as a developer advocate. Luce is awesome. So if you ever catch any of Luce's streams, highly recommend that.
MongoDB was the first database that I learned how to use because SQL scared me. Not gonna lie. I was terrified of SQL, and MongoDB seemed a lot easier because it looked like a Python dictionary. So I was like, "Yep, we're learning this one, I guess."
Cool. Okay. So about learning things, should we actually just start diving into a problem?
Only if we have to.
I guess
we probably should.
Yeah. On the Rust stream we did a couple of days ago, about half an hour in, we're still chatting with and someone actually put, "Can you start coding the problem?
Can you write code now?"
Okay. We can code now. Kemita Prog says the perfect stream. I work Python. Yeah. Excellent.
While you're getting the example loaded up, I will say a lot of interviews go like this. A lot of programming interviews go like this because ultimately the people that are interviewing you, if they're on your engineering team, they want to know that they can work with you. Are they gonna have fun? Are they going to enjoy the working experience? Are they going to get along with you? Is there going to be obvious friction? I love the intro. I feel like I'm being interviewed by I don't know how many people, but a lot of people asking me really good questions. And again, keep me on track, chat. So I will go down a tangent if I can. So don't let me do that. I see Sudoku.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. One more comment. From Jawad says, "Oh, great. Do a MongoDB tutorial, please,
Ooh,
soon."
it's been a
Okay.
while.
Loose.
Use
Loose. Let's get loose in for this.
yeah,
Loose.
use
Yes.
Beanie.
Let's jump on a stream together. I would love to do that with you. That'd be so cool. And Jay loves MongoDB, so there you go. So Jay's going to volunteer to help.
There you go. After PyCon.
After PyCon.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Let's do a quick PyCon shout out. Quick shout out to
Yeah.
PyCon. Jay, why should everyone go to PyCon?
Because I'll be there. No, so PyCon is the largest gathering of Python developers in the world. This will be the second PyCon that I've gone to. This will be the first PyCon that I'll be representing Microsoft. I'll be at the Microsoft booth most of the days. Also, I tell people, if you want to learn how to program, and your company will send you to PyCon, this is a way to do it, because you will have some of the brightest minds. Everyone from the creator of Python, Guido van Rossum, will be there. Everyone's favorite Python developer, Brett Cannon, will be there, and I'll be there. And there'll be personalities, people from different types of industries, from engineering, cloud to data science, even tutorial makers such as like Michael Kennedy or Dan Bader from Real Python. They're always there. It's always a fun time. We always have a blast. There'll be great talks, lightning talks. If your first conference talk is a lightning talk, PyCon is the best place to do it. And yeah, go have fun. It's in Salt Lake City. It is next month, and I think it's going to be a blast. And we'll have some special treats for people who visit the Microsoft booth where I will be, and we'll have some challenges for you.
Awesome. That sounds exciting. I'm aware of some of the things we've given out and done at PyCons in the past. So
This is going to be so different. I'm so excited. Oh man, it's going to be so good.
And I will actually, I'm just drop another link in the chat for everyone. We do have a Python Discord at Microsoft, so highly recommend you sign up with that. If you've got any questions from today's stream, or if you're watching the video of this later on, or from the other streams you're doing in the series, or I imagine there'll be some PyCon stuff happening in the Python Discord as well. Yeah. So if you're on Discord, sign up for the Python Discord, link in the chat, and you can just chat to all the Python folks at Microsoft. Highly recommend that. And actually, just one more link before we dive into problem. If you are interested in upskilling in Python, we have a whole load of online self-guided learning at Microsoft. And we're running a cloud skills challenge that goes with this. So you join the challenge, and we've got a whole load of online learning you can work through and compete with your friends. Yeah, you can kind of see how much you've learned compared to others. Kind of gamifies the learning a bit with some kind of great Python from like beginner level to slightly more advanced. It's all in this cloud skills challenge. So we'll just get a link dropped in the chat for that. But yeah, sign up for our cloud skills challenge, and upskill in Python if you need it. So with that, let's do some Sudoku. Let's do some Sudoku. Yay. So this is our challenge today. This is the kind of thing, going back to that question earlier, this is the kind of thing you might be given in a coding interview. And so in this particular one, we have a Sudoku board. If you've not come across Sudoku before, you have a 9x9 grid containing 9 3x3 cells, and everything has to have the numbers 1 to 9. So in each 3x3 cell, you have to have the numbers 1 to 9. So each number just once, and then every vertical and horizontal line also has to have the numbers 1 to 9. And so the challenge is you're given a board like this, and you have to work out what the numbers are. Mm-hmm. Now, what we're doing here is we have to validate an initial board.
Not solve it, because I love doing these puzzles. So if I start trying to solve it, like, stop me.
Okay, so maybe, well, because Jay, you'll be back in 2 weeks' time. Next week, we've got Dr. Sarah Kaiser joining us to talk about. So in that one, that's the time to ask the data pipeline question. But yeah, so maybe in a couple of weeks' time, we can do a Sudoku solver. That could be a bit of fun.
I like it.
But don't think about it in advance. This is
okay.
But now what we're doing here is we're just validating this. So simply, when we have a board, the initial state of the board with some of the numbers filled in, is it valid? We don't need to prove that the board that it can be solved, merely that it is valid. So what that means is in each 3x3 cell, no numbers are repeated. We only the numbers we have are only from 1 to 9, so we don't have like 10 or 0 in there. And then each horizontal line only has numbers 1 to 9, and each vertical line only has numbers 1 to 9 with no numbers repeated. So that's what we're trying to do. So here's an example here. This one's valid, and this cell 185, 216, and so on and so on and so on. This one here is invalid. The reason it's invalid, if we come across this center line here, we have 4 and 4.
I see a couple of rows where there are 2 6s in several places.
2 6s here, and then there's 2 6s in here as well, and 2 6s down here. So this one's kind of not a valid board. So our job is to validate.
Okay.
Actually, before we dive in, I really want to take this question from eccentric.
I saw it and I was like, I know we're going to talk about this.
Yeah. So I'm working as a technical lead, and every now and then I have to conduct interviews and interview experienced developers and inexperienced applicants. Just last week, I caught a candidate using ChatGPT during an interview. Want to talk about that?
I mean, I have opinions. So there's basically there's a couple of major thoughts here. And I'm not a technical lead, so feel free, eccentric supervisor, to tell me that I'm wrong. This is fine. But as someone who has done interviews in the past, again, my first thought is, do I trust this person to do the right thing? Am I trusting them to not be superficial, especially in developer advocacy? Everything we do with transparency. Everything that we do to hopefully help people. So the dishonesty of using a tool and pretending that all of the knowledge came from their mind, to me, is a big red flag. In terms of just using ChatGPT in general, Jim, we can share. Before we started the process, I said, should I turn off GitHub Copilot? And the answer was like, oh yeah, we should probably turn that off. And for me, these are tools. ChatGPT, Copilot, these are going to be tools that exist in the future. I think a developer that is skilled enough, that understands when to use the tools and when not to use the tools, is important. I think that's a skill. That's going to be a skill that we're going to have to develop over time, and we're all developing it at the same time. So if someone asks the question is, can I use ChatGPT? I wouldn't immediately answer with no, but I would answer, well, how do you plan on using it? And if it's, hey, explain this concept to me, something that maybe I'm not too experienced in, then I think that's perfectly valid. But if it's solve this puzzle for me, then absolutely not.
Yeah, it's another tool. It's like Stack Overflow, isn't it? It's another tool that we're using. So showing the ability to use the tool is valid, but using it to get the answer is not valid. And Jay, as you were saying about the transparency thing, a lot of people are looking at how ChatGPT can help accessibility. So if English is not your first language, you might want to use it to find, how do I say this concept in English? How can I explain this? You may be able to explain it very clearly in whatever is your first language, but maybe in English you can't. So it's okay to use it for that, as long as you're being totally transparent throughout the whole process. That's kind of one of the most important things is, I am using this tool. Let me tell you how I'm using it. Yeah. If you have to rely on the tool to do the job, not as an accessibility aid, but just simply because of a knowledge and skills thing, then you're not the right person for the job. But if it's a way to boost your accessibility, for example, it is a good thing.
Can I shamelessly plug a show that I do once a month? It's called Python Community News. And we have a comment from the chat from Alexandra that says, is it worth it to join PyCon remotely? I know that remotely you'll be having limited access to some of the conference features. In many cases, this is true. PyCon actually has a remote conference chair, which means they have someone who is completely dedicated to making the remote experience as good as possible. I would say if you can't join it in person, joining remotely is definitely a good substitute. They're not going to have, obviously, there won't be a hallway track there. There'll be something similar. There'll be a way that you can connect with people, but they will, for the most part, have all of the talks. They will have things that you can only do from a virtual standpoint. And like John said, if you can't attend, or even if a remote PyCon isn't necessarily in your budget financially, then yeah, there will be videos on YouTube. Usually it takes about 6 months before those videos appear. I tell people I go to conferences not for the talks, I go for the community. So anytime I get to enjoy time with the folks in the room, I always go for it, even if that means a virtual room.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, I think we keep getting derailed, which is fine. But Athena does say, what are the steps in order to validate it before the detailed syntax for this Sudoku? And what is the problem in an interview for a question like this company would like to get out tested? Okay, so I guess what you're asking is, what are the steps? And if a company asks you this question, what are they looking for? So, I mean, what they're looking for would be, well, they're either going to want to be looking for an answer. If it's a go off and do this by yourself, then they probably want to see an answer. And then that might be, is it an efficient answer? And that might be, do you have a good understanding of algorithms and data structures? That's usually one of the big things, especially for junior developers, is do you know your algorithms and data structures?
Absolutely.
I don't have a computer science degree. I don't know my algorithms and data structures. But a lot of these tests are for that. So it's, you go off and you learn about algorithms and data structures, and you do these problems to show you know about algorithms and data structures. And then you never use a linked list ever again in your life.
Absolutely.
But if you're doing this, especially in an environment where someone's watching you, they're looking for how you approach the problem. And I think if I actually kick off the problem, I think one good thing I can demonstrate is an approach I take, which I feel is an incredibly valuable approach, and that is test first. So the very first thing we should do when we're given this problem is we should build the tests. We build tests to validate whether we've got it to pass or fail. And that is a really good way to approach a problem, because we can't show whether we can solve the problem if we can't prove it. But how the best code is usually designed around test first. There's test-driven development, a lot of thought in this area. But if you can build test first, if you know you've got a defined problem space, if you can build the test first, then excuse me, that is a really good way to show that you know how to approach these problems. So let's do it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to invite Jay to join me. So I'm using Visual Studio Code, and I'm using a tool called LiveShare. If you've not come across this before, it is absolutely fantastic. Lots of things have been updated. Weird. It's an absolutely fantastic tool that allows folks to share the same coding session. So I'm not going to put this in public. I'm going to send this link to Jay in our private chat, because I don't want you all to jump into my Visual Studio Code. But what this means is Jay gets full access to everything I've got inside VS Code. It's not screen share. It is Jay will be running either Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code locally. They will see the folder that I've got open. They will see the files. They can edit files. In a minute, when Jay's in, you'll see them actually appearing in line. They're going to have access to my terminal. Please don't do RM-RF. We've already, that joke was done in an earlier stream. But yeah, Jay, if we get a moment, once you're in, if you just try typing in the terminal, I'll give you read-write access.
Absolutely. I think I was in a profile that didn't have LiveShare enabled, so I've enabled it now. LiveShare, join and join. Okay, restricted mode. We are loading up a workspace. Cool. I will just do echo. Well, hello. Okay.
So you see that wasn't me typing. I got my hands up in the air. That was Jay typing. But Jay will be seeing this on their screen in whatever setup they've got, whatever theme they've got. It's not a screen share. Erica said it looks so small and blurry. Okay, let me just make it a little bit bigger. hopefully that's okay for you, Erica.
Okay.
Oh, so I mentioned linked lists earlier. John replied with linked list, job posting head, application, telephone screening, interview with linked list problem, rejection email. And that's the linked list applying for a job.
No fun.
Cool. Jay, you able to access the terminal?
Let's see. Well, I don't think so, actually.
Okay. Normally, if you do something with the terminal, it should then.
Maybe I need a new terminal here.
Because it should be shared, so you should be able to type stuff in there, and it will ask whether.
Do you have multiple terminals open, or
just got the one?
Okay.
Okay. I'm just gonna share. I'm gonna share my terminal. There we go.
There we go. You're using Python 3.10. Okay. Yep.
Cool.
There we
go. So I learned a fun Mac trick because I'm on a Mac. If you type "say hello," it actually comes out through my speakers, and I only discovered that when my guest on the last stream is actually got my computer talking.
Yeah,
which was fun. Shana Smith says, "Did you share terminal?" Yes, we've just shared the terminal now. So that echo hello was Jay typing in there.
Yep.
So I like to build unit tests first, and I do zip around different languages. So Jay, can you just spin up a quick test harness?
So I'm actually a fan of a PyTest, but before we do that, we should probably get in a virtual environment. And VS Code has a great create environment feature. Do you have I don't know, how does that work for you? I don't think I can install your extensions, but do you have the Python? You do have Python. Okay, cool. Let's see. In that case, we'll do it the old school way, which is just V and V. Well, before we do that, Python -n V and V. Yep, there's that. Make sure I'm like bouncing back and forth.
Yep.
Do we want to select it? Yes, we want to select it. Sweet. And I'm a fan of PyTest. You don't necessarily have to use PyTest, but I'm a fan of PyTest. So it's going to do its thing.
So why did you use Python -m pip install rather than just pip install?
So that I don't do the thing that I just did, which is install it accidentally in the wrong environment. So first, we need to actually get into our virtual environment. There we go. Now let's do pip install PyTest. So occasionally your pip and your Python cannot be in sync. If you use Python-m, you're calling the actual module from within the Python interpreter itself, which means that it's guaranteed that you will pip install Python. You'll pip install that module inside of that particular instance of Python, that in particular environment. So do you have to do it? No. As someone who often has like 7 versions of Python installed, it is the most guaranteed way to ensure that I am installing it into the correct Python, especially when you have some systems where they still specifically use like pip for Python 2 and pip 3 for Python 3. So again, it's not necessarily something you have to do, but you can do that as like I know for a fact I am in the Python that I am going to be using when I call Python. So, and you'll see me use this. I'll use Python-m for a lot of the things that we're going to do, instead of including create this first test, which is going to be, we'll just see. Yeah, just this to make sure that we're there. We're going to call this test hello. Okay, sure. It is inside of the actual Sudoku. That's not the biggest issue.
Yeah, well, because I navigated into the Sudoku folder. That's where I wanted to have it, because we're going to...
Okay, let me put it back then.
Yeah.
and then we can, and we could even, I think we can still even run Python and PyTest from here, and it should navigate it. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so we have a working test. We have something there. Obviously, it didn't really test anything. There were no assertions, but this is why I like PyTest is I can just write a test, and then as long as the module is named test or it starts with test, as long as the function or class starts with test, then it should work. Also, I should learn how to spell hello.
Yeah. A nice little warning here saying, did you mean to use assert instead of return?
Yeah. And you know, assert true, since we don't actually have well, I guess you could do that, but you could also just do, I don't think I've ever actually tried to do that. I think you just do assert true as well in PyTest. Well, also you do have autosave on. Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Alexis Fraga says the best way to run Python I find is using the Python launcher py. I have not come across that before.
Yeah, okay. Sure. I don't think I've ever used that. I know you're using PyEnvironment, which is great. I also use PyEnv. It is a really wonderful tool, especially when you're testing multiple versions of Python. I noticed that we are in Python 3.96. Interesting. I don't think for anything that we're we can run with it. This will add an interesting challenge. I don't think
there's 3.10.
Yeah, I've been playing in Python 3.11. I don't, unless we do typing and data classes, which is possible. Yeah. Alias to Python 3. Huh. Do you have your...
Yeah, Python 3.
Yeah, 6. Do you have... You said you have PyEnv installed?
I don't think so.
Oh, no, you don't have PyEnv. Oh, I have PyEnv. So whenever it opened up, it looked like it was saying, it said, yeah, PyEnv shell 3.10.6, but I wonder if that's probably my shell trying to load Python. Yeah, it says user bin Python 3. You're not using Homebrew. You're using the default.
I don't know why, because I should have. I think because I was trying. I'm recording a series of videos next week, and for part of it, I wanted to show installing Python. So I think I removed the Homebrew Python.
Yeah.
Okay. I should I'll upgrade with Homebrew after this stream.
Okay, we got to use 3.96. Okay, I'm pretty sure.
We can't use Copilot. We're using 3.96. So this is coding in hardcore mode.
Wrinkles. Okay, I think we should still be okay. 3.96 still has data classes. I like data classes because it gives me a little bit of structure here. I'm just trying to think. Some of the typing is going to be different, but when in doubt, we can just import typing and then things should work. Okay, cool.
So Cody has a question about the test, saying, does PyTest pick using prefix test star.py recursively from subdirectories as well? So if you have in subdirectories, if you have anything that's test something.py, does PyTest pick that up?
Yes, it does. And you can also have it specify where you want it to load from. So we could do PyTest, this test folder, and it's only going to search things within that testing folder.
And Geza Molnar says the religious war on if test underscore should be a prefix of the final or a postscript. So optional topic to argue about where to put the test file. Okay, so there's different people do it different ways, whether it's test underscore or something underscore test.
So yeah, I usually when my code structure is often whatever the top level is, then the source or module folder. Usually I do source. And then I do the module name. And then you can have a test folder as well with that. Basically, I have all folders at the top level, except for like your README, your license, git ignore, all that stuff. And then you have a separate area for tests, and then you have a separate area for your source code. And there are ways that you can set that up and configure it, especially if you're using something like I make Python packages from time to time. So the best way that I tend to do that is using something like pyproject.toml. And the cool thing about toml files is, one, PyTest supports configuration via toml file. So I can say, hey, when I just run python-m pytest, I can have all of the things that I want it to do as a configuration option inside of my pyproject.toml. And from there, I don't have to go through the process of typing all that stuff in every time. So I can do things like, hey, if it ever fails, immediately stop the program and let me go to just where the first fail is. Only check certain files. If I'm using an extension like PyTest coverage, make sure that you're presenting a coverage report with each test. All of that stuff can be configured inside of the PyProject toml. And also you can set the base test module path, which again, if you're using something like a source, that way you don't have to, I can type this out here. Instead of, in my setup, normally, if it's inside of a source folder, you have to like import source, whatever the project name is, and then whatever your module is. But you can just set a flag that says always pull from inside of the project. So then it's just project.module. And technically you could even do it to where it's just import module. But I would probably lean towards that. That way you know that you're pulling specifically from that namespace and not from something else in like standard library.
Cool. Okay, that's something we should probably dive into at some point. Actually, maybe
let's do a
show on that. But for now, we've got 13 and a half minutes left, and we haven't even.
Oh, it's only an hour. I thought we had 2 hours. My bad.
Only an hour. That's cool. But we're back next week and the week after, so it's
okay.
So just thinking about the test we've got to write. So we're saying earlier that it's data structures and algorithms are kind of the things that people are looking at. So if you wanted to build a Sudoku board, what data structure would you use? How would you represent this in code?
So if I wanted to build a Sudoku board, this is a thing that I actually am not very familiar with in terms of, we don't have the image loading extension.
The image loading extension?
Isn't there a way that you can view images from inside of VS Code?
You just click on the image?
I did, and I'm getting an error occurred while loading the image.
Huh. Okay.
But I can look at the browser here. Okay, so we have this image here. It is a grid of 9 rows or 9 blocks, each having 9 rows and 9 columns. There's a part of me that wants to just use a numpy array.
Okay.
However, I am not super knowledgeable in the world of numpy arrays. And also I think that validating some of these things in an area and discipline that I'm not too familiar with sounds like a bad idea. So, as I mentioned before, I am a big fan of data classes. What I would do is I would create a few data classes, and some of those would have things like, it could be a list of lists, each list representing a row. That is true. One of the problems you're going to run into is you have to do rows. You also have to do columns. And then is anything up until now something we would be doing during a virtual interview? I think all of this would be something that you do during a virtual interview. How do interviewers feel about using NumPy? I also think that that's valid. It depends on the company. Some companies will use Anaconda, which will have things like NumPy and things like that included. We could use pandas. We could use, well, we don't really use polars all that much, but we could use polars, which is the pandas alternative that is written with Rust on the back end for more performance. There's a lot of different ways we could do this. We could do data frames. We could do I mean, if you want to really get wild, we could do an Excel spreadsheet and just use OpenPy Excel and be like, hey, check this column, check this row. I think we're good here.
So going back to John's question, is anything up to now something we would be doing during a virtual interview? I mean, yes, exactly what you're doing right now, Jay. That the idea of here are multiple ways I could solve the problem, and that kind of evaluation of I could do it in NumPy array. Okay, should I? Shouldn't I? I can do it in Pandas data frame. Should I? Shouldn't I? I could do it in Excel. Should I? Shouldn't I? Having that conversation out loud, yes, if you're in an interview with people, is a really good thing to do, isn't it? Because it's showing your thought processes. That's a lot of what people are looking for.
There's also the question on what's going to be the most important thing. If performance is most important, then you 100% want to use something like NumPy or maybe a Polar. I mean, again, I haven't played around with Polars all that much, so I'm saying that to say that. But actually meant setting up an environment and etc. Yes. Also, yes. I think one challenge there might be instead of me jumping into someone else's live chat, I would probably want to do it the other way around because I want the interviewer to see the environment that I work in. That's going to give them a little bit more knowledge. Again, they'll see, oh, hey, you have Copilot, but Copilot's disabled. That means you're a Copilot user. Oh, you might use different extensions that are going to help. I use the Black extension that will do a lot of linting and formatting for me so that I don't have to. Not that I don't know how, just I want to save keystrokes. How do you write your PyTest stuff? Do you use the actual testing extension in VS Code? Or are we using an existing coding platform? Yeah, they might actually jump you into you said LeetCode or something like that and say, solve the problem there. All of these things are going to be different and it's all going to depend on the interviewer. I personally enjoy hey, keep me in my environment where I'm going to be writing code for you if I'm hired, and where I feel most comfortable to do my best work.
Yeah, because they are usually a company is not hiring you to do what they tell you to do. They're hiring you because you have some skills and experience, and they want to learn from you. And some of that is what your setup is. Yeah, you're never going to be coding in Notepad. Or sorry, as John Liu says, or assume something like CoderPad. You're not going to be coding necessarily in those tools. You'll be coding in the tool of your choice, whether it's VS Code, whether it's what's the JetBrains one?
PyCharm.
PyCharm. That was I keep on want to say PyLance, but that's the language runtime. Yeah, PyCharm. Whatever environment you're most comfortable in, by having them see this might give them more inspiration on how they can change their setup. And a lot of places these days are now moving away from the idea of you have a standard setup. It's everyone brings their own thing to the table and have their own setup they want, even if it's down to do you want a Mac or Windows or Linux laptop. There's kind of so many different options that people have. So it's kind of good to be able to show this way you do things differently.
Yeah. Because we're running low on time, I'm just typing away here. Will interviewers expect you to do a coding challenge that requires knowledge of a certain library like NumPy? Oftentimes, the interviewer will give you some specifics. They might even say like, hey, do this without importing modules. And in that case, I tend to push back on those because I'm like, why? You're going to let me import the modules? Unless you're working in I've worked in sensitive areas where you need security clearances and they're like, we have to validate all of our modules. So therefore, you can't use this. Often those are imposed due to the platform that they're using. If they're using a CoderPad. I don't know. I haven't used CoderPad, but maybe CoderPad. I know some of these other tools won't let you import certain tools, or they will only give you a limited set of the tools. Again, this is where I feel like every interview is different. And as I've gone into the industry, the longer I've been in the industry, the more that I have preferences. But if someone is like, oh, well, you can't do this. I mean, we're already limited to Python, 396 and no Copilot. So I'm already at a disadvantage here. I feel like adding more of those things it's more like, are you just doing this to do this, or are you doing this to actually see what I'm capable of? So I'm typing this out now, and I don't think that we're actually going to stick with each of these. I'm more just typing them out because it's kind of good to. There's a chef's term called mise en place, which is basically pull all your stuff out and look at it. That way you can see what's going on. And my first thought was a data class, because with a data class we could do like a set of grids and things like that. However, I don't fully think that this is going to be the way to go. We do have these 3 things that we need to check for. We need to check, sorry, not the entire board. We need to check for the block. And I would say that the block is going to be a list of 9 characters. So we could do...
I do want to just take this question from Geza Molnar here. Wouldn't you approach the case by first thinking about how and for what are you going to use the data, in this case of validation, and then second contemplating about the actual data structure? And another benefit would be flexibility of changing the data structure if needed. So I guess that's kind of thinking more functional first, as in what are the functions we want to do on our data to validate it, that would then change how we define our data.
I mean, I think that there's a few ways to go about this first. I mean, if we did something like this, we could say, our block is a list of 9 characters. And then there's also some performance reasons why you might want to go with a tuple over a list. So we have this list of 9 characters in an array. I don't know why I just didn't type 1 through 9. That would have been smarter. There we go. And I'm using Vim mode. I probably could have done that faster. So if you have something like that, and then what you would have to check is give me 9 characters that are in the block, in the row, in the column. And then your board is basically made up of blocks, rows, columns, and then you would have, and this is why I was thinking of some type of class structure, because then you could just do, block for block and blocks. Then you would have some blocks value there, something like that. So then you could say, like, you have this list of objects here, and then you could just validate all of these. So you would say, in my block, or in my blocks, then I need to check that each of the blocks are valid. So then you would have some validator there. And then you do and I'm trying to set Sarah up, since apparently she's going to be continuing on for me. She might look at this and be like, we're not doing any of this.
So question for you, actually, just thinking about this. We have blocks, rows, and columns. It's kind of inherent in the rows and columns that we automatically get the blocks. So if I just bring up the picture again, we've got a block. And the first of block 1, the very first 3 values are the first 3 of the row. So would we have blocks, or would we just have rows and columns and then use that to automatically build the blocks for us?
So this is why blocks up here is still kind of empty. I don't really know what that is. I could give it a type and just say that it's going to be a list of integer of some type. The thing that I'm thinking with this is, if we were to do something where you have some input, you input a number, that number has a coordinate. That coordinate is, we could, it would be something like this, where this would be the block, this would be the row, and this would be the column. Then you could auto assign this into your board. and then run a validation on each one.
So Carderum says, I thought about using coordinates in a dictionary.
Yeah. So if you have a dictionary, the dictionary would replace the board basically. The reason I like data classes is because I like just saying dot this. I feel like it's a little bit easier to read. Also, you can run different values with it being a class. So you can actually do like setters. So if you set this value, you can immediately check against it. And if it doesn't work, then you can return an error instead of having it, you have to supply all of the values. And then if you supply all the values, you run the test and it goes, here's a list of all the ones that are broken. I could just say, I want to put this number in this row in this column. And then if you do that, then you can say, okay, this row in this column is in this block. So I'm
going to stop you there. We are at time.
Okay.
And I know we have other sessions happening on the Twitch channel after this. So we'll stop there. As you can see, we didn't really get through some, but I think we had a lot of good conversations. So I hope everyone who joined us enjoyed the conversations we've had. I'll be back next week. Jay is unable to join next week, so we're going to have Dr. Sarah Kaiser, who will be joining in next week, who is a colleague of Jay's, and then Jay will be back in 2 weeks' time. So it's going to be interesting to see how Sarah approaches this problem next week, and then if we don't complete the problem, then Jay will take over.
We'll come back
and iterate on what Sarah's done. If we do complete it next week, then we can come up with a new problem for Jay. So, but no, I think there's some great conversation. And John says, sorry for interrupting so much, but nope, this is the whole point. Honestly, we're here to answer your questions. This is a show for you. Yes, we may not have got very far in what we're trying to do, but we're back next week to carry on getting further. We're here to help you and support you and answer your questions. So any great questions around how you can boost your interview skills, how you've got increase your chances of solving these in the real world when you're faced with one of these in an interview, we're here to help with that. So don't worry at all. Glad you joined us. Glad you're here to answer the questions. Jay, thank you very much for your time today. I hope this wasn't too scary. I know you were worried about approaching some of these problems in public. So thank you for your vulnerability, and thank you for sharing great knowledge with everyone here today. But with that, we've got to drop off. Thank you, everyone who joined. And yeah, we will see you next week. There's a link in the chat to the series page if you haven't signed up for the whole lot. Otherwise, see you next week. Thanks, everyone.